Hey everybody, this is Zach over at The Edge Pro. The video you're about to watch is from our archive of training DVDs that we sell on our website, and now we're just kind of putting them out there for you guys to view on YouTube. If you enjoy the video and you learn from it and you'd like to learn more, obviously you can go and check out all our other YouTube videos, like this one, and follow our page. We have lots of similar content out there. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. And you can also visit our website to view products that are going to be in these videos. Hopefully you enjoy the video and it's got some great content in there. However, we would caveat that these videos are older and have quite a bit of outdated content, and there's some better information in some of our newer videos, and hopefully in videos that we haven't put out yet. Again, we're simply posting this for some historical reference, and maybe you can pick up some tricks, or we say something in the video that is a different way than you've heard it before and you find it helpful. In any case, we hope you enjoy the video and can benefit from it. Thank you guys. Make sure you like and follow.
Hello, I'm Robert Chisel with Nebraska Blades. As part of my clipper blade and shear sharpening business, we have always fixed and repaired clippers that our customers are going to own and use on a daily basis. It always made sense to us to do these repairs. They use them daily. There's no point in calling on your customer and having these people send these clippers to somewhere else. Matter of fact, if you have strong competition in your area, if someone else is doing clipper repair, they may in fact steal some of your business. A customer likes to go to one source, be able to get their blade sharpened, their shear sharpened, and some clipper repair. Now there's actually two levels of clipper repair that you can do. There's certain wear parts in the Andis and the Oster clipper that are just going to wear out and they have to be replaced periodically. When a customer buys a brand new pair of Andis clippers, she's going to receive a little package and it's going to have what's called a drive. She is expected periodically, 3 months to replace this drive. The clipper could be running excellent, but if this drive wears out and fatigues, in fact, brand new clipper blades or freshly sharpened clipper blades will not perform as they should. Likewise, on the Oster, it has some wear parts. It's got a little lever that sticks out here, and there's some other things. So you can repair these, replace these parts. Even though she received this with her clipper, she may not even know where it goes, may never attempt, and she may tell you she was wondering what that thing was and what she should do with it. Some people will do these minor repairs themselves. You certainly can supply them with the parts and earn an income there. I have actually gone into a client, delivered blades, and her clipper wasn't up to speed, and for no charge to her, I would charge her for the part, but I would quickly snap in these parts. All of a sudden, her clipper worked much better, and you had a very happy customer. Now, in this film, we can't address every clipper that's on the market. You have to know the clientele that you are going to be focusing on. If you're in the animal industry, that's veterinarians and groomers, perhaps horse people, you're mainly going to see an Andis, an Oster clipper, perhaps a Wall. You might see a Lob. If you're doing the barber trade, you're going to see smaller clippers. You still may see the larger clippers in the barber shops, but you'll also will see smaller clippers. Now, we focused on the animal industry, so we don't see very many clippers like this. Matter of fact, we don't stock any parts. If one comes in, we can get parts overnight, and it's mainly cords and switches and things of that. However, if you're calling on a lot of barbers, you may want to stock some of these parts that you can repair it very quickly, like overnight. We have made arrangements with one of our suppliers that if you use the name Nebraska Blades, you can get a clipper like this in from your customer and send it to our supplier. Use the name Nebraska Blades, and they will repair this for you. They will charge you wholesale prices for any parts that they put in. They'll charge you a less of a labor charge. So they'll fix it. They have the parts in stock. They're authorized. You get the clipper back and you can deliver it to your customer ready to go. You can upcharge if you like. You can go up to retail prices on the parts that were put in, and you can add your own labor charge. You may just want to get it fixed and not have to worry about the clipper and just pass on the charges that come to you at cost to the customer. This is something that you're going to have to make up your mind. But this service is offered, so you're not going to have to stock parts for every single clipper. You pick out the most popular ones, and you stock parts for those and do the repair work. And when a strange clipper comes in, or one that you don't see very often, feel free to send it to our supplier and have the work done for you. Matter of fact, Nebraska Blades uses this policy for some of our blades, some of our clippers. We do not fix lot clippers for reasons that go back years. And in our part of the country, we don't see a lot of wall clippers. So we choose not to stock parts for those. Let's get started with an Andis clipper, an Oster clipper. This is the granddaddy of them. This was the first one out. This is called an A2 clipper. It has a head that snaps off and a motor assembly that looks similar to this. This clipper is totally obsolete. You cannot buy any parts for it today. Once in a while, a customer will buy one at a garage sale, or maybe a veterinarian owns one that he graduated from vet school with, and he loves it, but doesn't use it too much, so it's still going today. But you cannot buy parts anymore. If you notice in the front of the clipper here, it has a large hole. The blade looks very, very similar to present-day blades, snap-on blades, but it had a large hole in the back of the blade. There was simply a large screw that went on that held the blade in place. When she was ready to change blades, she had to take the screw out, snap on a different size blade, and then continue. In the past, some groomers would buy several heads like this, put a number 10 blade on it, have a second head, and put maybe a number 5. When they were ready to change blade side, they just snapped on the head that they were wanting to use. If one of these blades, one of these clippers come into you, you probably are going to politely have to refuse to do it. Just tell them parts are no longer available, and there's really nothing you can do. It's probably time to retire the clipper. The next clipper that Oster came out with was a clipper similar to this. The first one was called a silver. This happens to be a golden A5. It has a golden cap on it. The first one had a silver cap on it, and the housing and the parts in there were different than the present day golden. This happens to be a single speed. They make a golden today that's a 2-speed, and you can quickly identify it by the switch in the back, whether it's a 2-speed or a single speed. Oftentimes on the plate, it will tell you if it's a 2-speed or a single speed. Now, a clipper like this comes in, and we can immediately see that there's problems with it. It has a red end cap, and it has a black case, which works just fine. But in fact, there should also be a black end case. Also, you can see there's a large crack in the clipper. This housing has been broken, it has been dropped or whatever, and it's broke, and this housing actually holds the armature and field in place. So this has to be replaced. Remember, the customer is working around stainless steel tables, dampness, and she has 110 bolts in her hand. So Oster definitely would not want a clipper to go out like this with a crack. Never try to super glue it. Never try to wrap black tape around it. You just replace the part. Also, you may want to take a look at the cord Oftentimes, when the dog is being groomed, they'll chew on his cord or bite the cord. And if you see a single bite mark, an indentation, you're probably okay. But if you look at that mark or that cord, and you can actually see there's a black wire running in here and a white wire. And if you see that exposed, definitely replace the cord. It's a safety issue. And don't try to tape it. Don't try to put it back together. As a matter of fact, don't try to put a different type of cord on this clipper. Just buy the Oster cord that fits in there. It has the grommet. And do not try to take shortcuts on replacing parts. Use regular parts. Now this clipper comes in, we may get a few clues about it, what it's doing. She may say it's cutting in and out, which is a good indication that it has a bad cord. As she flexes this clipper in using it, it's a braided cord and it will short out one way or the other. Oftentimes at this end here where the plug is, it will also become frayed. And we're going to test that cord in just a moment, and you can tell if it needs a replacement. Normally, fixing a clipper is just a process of elimination. You're going to check the cord first. You're going to check the switch, and if these are good, then you can go on and continue. Sometimes you'll find the bad cord, you'll fix it, but you will find other problems such as this crack. Generally speaking, if our repair bill is going to run over $75, we probably would advise the client that it's going to be that much because she can buy a new one for $125, $130. And if this clipper has 100,000 miles on it, several years old, it gets to a point where it's not really worth repairing. Now the clipper comes in, we're going to examine some parts on it while we have it. This is the hinge assembly, and it's snapped out now, ready to have a blade put on it. Now we're going to close it, and we're going to take just a common screwdriver, and we're going to try to lift that back up. And as you can see, this one's very tight. In other words, there's no wiggle into it. If I could move it up and down with my fingernail, this little blade, then that tells me this needs to be replaced. It may hold the smaller blades up like 40s, but when it gets heavier blades, it will start flopping down. So right away, if you see that looseness, you know you're going to have to replace the hinge. It also has a hook on here, a latch, and that's part of the hinge assembly. Sometimes this little hook is broke off, and it needs to be repaired. This needs to hook over the blade. We would keep a pad by our work table, and as we see these problems, bad hinge, we see a case that's going to have to be replaced, possibly a cord, we're starting to getting a general idea of what this clipper is going to cost. And if we see a lot of things, we may even question how deep we want to go into it. Now, we do have a meter, and it plugs into an outlet such as this. This will read volts, amps, and watts. And you simply put it in a line. Let's turn this clipper on. We have it set to read amps, and we want to see how many amps this clipper is pulling. We see that this clipper is pulling over 500 milliamps. The range, if we look at our chart, should be around 290, 300. So we see already that this is pulling an awful lot of current, much higher. There's problems in there. It could be a problem in the armature or the field. So we're getting kind of suspicious of this clipper. If we take it apart and we discover all this stuff, we're going to question whether the customer wants to spend that kind of money to repair this older clipper. I really don't like to send it back out with this purple cover end cap on it, but we're not going to use any tape. So we're already $15 for this housing. this black housing. We're going to be up there replacing this hinge assembly. So we're starting to get suspicious how far we want to go. Now, at this point, we would simply take an air gun and start cleaning out some parts. Just blow it out with compressed air. We're going to remove this hinge. And there's 2 large screws that hold it in place. So it comes off. Got our 2 screws. We're going to use our screws again, so we're going to just put those up there. You can see that there's 2 very small springs on either side that match up to 2 holes. We've examined these parts, and in this case, we determined that they're okay. This wasn't weak here. This hook is not broke off. Sometimes these very fine wires will be broken off. The hinge is in good shape, but if it doesn't match up with these 2 holes in the latch, you're going to have to replace the hinge. Now, I'm going to put on some magnification to be able to see those small holes. And it's a bit of a finesse to get this started. Again, you place 1 hole on, and sometimes these go on very quickly, and sometimes you're going to end up messing with them for a little while. There, we have it back in place. We push it forward so it stays in place. Now this is ready to be reassembled, so we're going to set this aside. If we're going to put on the new part, we would write it on our list and be ready for the new part. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take out the brushes and examine the brushes. Maybe that noise or that high amperage was caused by short brushes. These are spring loaded, so you kind of carefully take them out. The spring flies out, you're going to lose it. And in this particular case, this brush is about 25% wore out. We actually, in fact, would reuse this set of brushes. If they were shorter than this, we'd reach and just replace a new brush. Oster, when they sell this clipper brand new in the box, it will come with a second set of brushes. And Oster was notorious for using a lot of brushes. So it's one of the most common things you're going to replace. Oftentimes, one of the brushes will be much shorter than the other brush. So you're going to reach for a set of 2 and replace them. Now, if you notice, I can hold this brush with the wire, with the little spring. It actually has a little post inside here, and we're not sure if the camera is going to pick that up, but there's a little post in there that the end of the screw, the end of the spring actually springs over it. Sometimes that little post will break off and it won't make good contact. So if you cannot hold the brush by the spring and it remain intact, that means you're going to replace brushes. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take off the end cap, and this clipper here, it has a slotted screw on one side and a Phillips screw on the other. They're supposed to be both slotted screws. So the customer either lost her screw and replaced it with what she had, or perhaps whoever did the past repairs on this did that. When we put this back together, we would put 2 slotted screws. The lid comes off, and you can see the mechanism in here. It consists of a gear, which is not exposed right now, a link, and a drive. Now what you want to do is examine the corners of this drive. This is nylon or nylon-like material, and these little corners will wear off. This is what a new one looks like. And I actually don't see too much wear in this old one, but oftentimes these will come in and these corners will be rounded off. Now, when this lever engages the blade, if these corners are wore off, instead of making a full pass, it's going to be slapping back and forth. If this is wore off 10%, you can double that because this side will be wore off 10%. So already you've lost 20% in the power of the clipper or the sweep of the clipper. Also, I'm going to wiggle this, and this one's fairly tight, but if this would wiggle like a loose tooth, that tells me that these parts are worn and they need to be replaced. The lever is relatively inexpensive, a few dollars. The link is relatively inexpensive, but this darn gear is kind of pricey. Oftentimes I can replace the lever and the link 2 times for every 1 time that I replace this. In other words, I don't have to replace this every time. But you have to watch it, and we'll take that out. Sometimes it will just pop out. Sometimes you need to grab it with a pair of pliers. There's the old one. Here's the drive. And when I lift this up, the gear is going to come with it. We actually have 2 separate parts here. Now, we're going to reinsert this gear. Now we can look down in there and see it, and we're going to try to move it with our fingers. And this one's kind of borderline. You can see the play in there. In other words, these gears, these fiber gears have worn, and I'm starting to get play in there. Now remember, if you lost 10% on one side of the lever, 10% on the other, that's 20%. If you lost another 5 or 10% here, this clipper's only running at perhaps 70% or 60% of its potential speed. So it may be time to replace this. This is especially important in the spring and early summer when the dogs come in with a very thick coats on. They've grown that thick undercoat over winter, and the clipper's going to have to be in top shape in order to do the job. Maybe last fall she was using her blade for 4 or 5 dogs. They were lasting a long time, and now in the spring she's using her clipper and she's barely getting a dog out of it. It could be that the dog has a very thick undercoat. But anyway, the clipper needs to be in top condition. Now under this gear, sometimes when you lift the gear out, you're going to find a silver washer under here, and that can be reused. And in this particular case, it's still down on the post. And as I move it here, you can see it move. So I know that that washer is in there. That washer has to be there. And if it's missing, you're going to need to replace it. Never put more than 1 in. I've seen them where, for whatever reason, they would stack several up in there. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take our end cap off. Remember, the clipper is unplugged at this point. You're going to have some exposed wires in here when we take this end cap off, and we don't want you to shock yourself. Okay, the end cap comes off. We're going to set this aside for a minute. These screws, we're going to take them out right now so we don't lose them. And if you notice, these long machine screws have a tiny washer on them, a lock washer. That lock washer has to be in place, should be in place. Sometimes the customer may have taken these screws out and she lost one of these washers, or the previous repair person perhaps lost the washer. So keep a supply of washers and replace them. Now we're going to turn our attention to the cord. If the clipper is not getting electricity through it, you have to adjust that problem first. We're going to take a simple meter here, and there's actually an audio beep when I put these 2 probes together. Also, my gauge will start reading. It's reading It's just flashing just a little bit. That means I have a complete circuit that can flow through the meter through these end caps. So what we're going to do, we're going to put one of these probes on one of the plugs. It makes no difference which one you put it on. We're going to see the wire that comes up through the cord. The first one we're going to go to is the white one. And we immediately have a reading. It's under 1, so we know we have a complete circuit through this side of the cord. Now we're going to move the post to the other side, the other terminal, and we're going to go to the opposite black cord that's coming in. And again, we're getting a reading. We know we have a completed circuit. So in this case, we know that this cord is good. If we would see wild numbers up here or flashing, we would know that the cord is bad. It's a braided cord and the braids could be broke. I oftentimes try to wiggle the end cap. This is where it's going to be flexing, and I try to get it to fail. And this one checks out okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is check the switch itself. Now on the single speed switch, it has 2 terminals on one side. In other words, the current goes in here, goes through the switch and back out this post over here. So what I'm going to do is put my terminal on the post, and then I'm going to touch, and I have no reading on my meter whatsoever. However, if we turn the switch to the on position, we now have a reading. And it's a low reading and staying constant, so we know that this switch is good. We may want to wiggle this post a little bit, and it stays the same. So in this case, we've eliminated the switch and the cord. We know these items are good, and we can proceed with our other repairs. Now we're back to the clipper, and you'll see 2 brass terminals right here. These make contact with the back of the switch. Sometimes, overuse, these get pushed down slightly, either one of them. So what we're normally going to do is just lift them up just slightly. We're going to lift them up just slightly that they make a little better contact. Also, you can see that these are kind of corroded and rusty. So we're going to take some emery cloth and we're going to brush up and make that shiny again, so that we know we have a good contact point. We may also want to just kind of touch up the terminals on the switch itself. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this motor from this frame. Now what we use is a snap ring pliers, and I do recommend that you buy a snap-on tool, Mac tool, a Sears. Use a really good quality snap ring pliers. Do never use the kind that have the little screw down here that you can put different tips in. It has a fairly powerful snap ring in here, and if you slip off of it, you're going to crack the case. I sometimes take a 2-inch hose clamp and put it around the end of the clipper, that if in fact I do slip off the snap ring, it will not damage the housing. If I break the housing, I have to replace it, and I don't really care to do that. So we're going to get a grip on it, and you just finesse it out. We'll set that aside. There's another ring in here that will fall out. There it is. Now the motor can be removed. Oftentimes this is in there really hard and you have to shake it. You may have to press down on the worm drive here to push it out, but you get it. You may have to put the screws back in there without the end cap to get something that you can grab, and this one comes out fairly easy. We already know we're going to replace this housing, so we're going to set that aside. And here we have 2 parts. We have the armature, and we have the field. And they go in as such. Now right off the bat we see a lot of dirt here, a lot of wear. We got grease up here, so we're going to clean it up a little bit. And it oftentimes will be almost 100% packed with hair and fur and dirt. This actually has a little fan blade on it. And when it's inserted in the field, the motor's running, this fan is spinning, and the idea is that it pulls air through these vent holes in the end cap, pulls it over the armature to cool it, and then blows it out of these vents here. So when this clipper's running, you can actually feel a breeze coming out of the side of the clippers. It's a design that, you know, you're working around dogs, it's gonna pull a lot of hair through there. I've actually seen plenty of clippers that when I took these screws out to remove the end cap, the cap would actually pop off and this would be totally packed with hair. In that case, you're going to go to your air gun and you're going to blow that out. Now, we're going to take our emery cloth and we're going to kind of clean up this blackness on the armature. Remember, the brushes make contact with this armature and it has to be relatively clean. After you've cleaned it up, you should blow it out with an air gun. You've taken off some copper particles and you don't want any possibility of a short, so you're going to blow it off. I actually like to take the emery and actually clean up the shaft a little bit, or it's going to make contact with the bearing. Now we can test this armature, and the way we're going to do that, we're going to stick it into a foam block here so that this will stay in position. Now I'm going to take my screwdriver and I'm going to make a scratch mark on one of these panels so I know where I started and where I'm going to end. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my terminals on two adjoining panels or segments. And I'm going to watch for a reading. In this case, it's reading about 9.1. Now I'm going to go to the next two and I'm going to get a reading. And there it's reading 9. So what I'm looking for, if I find an old that does not register or has a crazy number, like it shoots real high to like up to 30, I know I have a bad segment. The armature in that case is shot and I have to replace it. So you can see I'm going around and I'm touching each two panels, making note of my reading, and each one of these is reading about 9. I'm looking for all these readings to be within 10% of each other. So if I get one that's vastly off or even a little bit off, I know that I have a bad armature, and at that point this armature would have to be replaced. This is 8.7, that's within range. 8.7, 8.8. So I continue all the way around checking my readings, and in fact I'm back to my starting point, and this armature here checked out okay. Now I have an old A2 armature here and it only has 7 segments, and when I read on here adjoining segments, all right, on this particular one I get no reading on my meter whatsoever. It's dead. This armature is shot. If I go to the next two, I'm getting a reading, but it's flashing. It's not consistent. So this tells me there it's flashing. But this tells me there's no repairs on this whatsoever. If you get those readings or no reading whatsoever. On the old A2s, sometimes when they would come in, you would have a bad segment. And if, when the clipper stopped, if it stopped on the brushes on that bad segment, the clipper would not start again. If you would spin this slightly and get to the next panel, all of a sudden it would take off. And it would have enough force that it would keep going by that bad place. But if it would stop with the brushes on a bad panel, it just wouldn't work. And the only solution is to replace it. Now, here's where I caution you. If, in fact, you have a bad armature, these windings in here are varnished for insulation. Now remember, this could have been packed with dirt. The armature ran extremely hot, and that's what caused it to fail. It started to melt some of this insulation and caused it to short out. If, in fact, the clipper ran that hot, there is an excellent chance that the field is also bad. So this is going to cost you $25, $30 to replace this armature. I can almost guarantee you that if you replace an armature, the field is also going to be bad within 6 weeks or so. So now this is also going to be $25, $30. So now you're up to replace these two parts. You're up to about up to $50, $60. Plus we got the case and anything else we find. So at this point, you may want to determine if you have a bad armature that you call your customer and advisor and, send a clipper back to her. Now you can also check the field with this little meter. And what we're going to do, we're going to go to one of the ports where the brush goes in. And we're going to go to one of the terminals and watch our meter. There's no reading there, so we're going to go to the other one. And there it's reading 21.5. Now I go to the opposing set of terminals, check my reading, and it's running just about the same, 21, 22. So this tells me this field is good. There again, if these two readings would be more than 10% off, that means I have a bad field and it needs to be replaced. If you replace a field, actually the only part you're going to replace is this part back here. It comes apart. You have to reach in there and you can see some little clips that go on the end of these brushes. So you can just replace this if that's what you want to do, or if you talk to your customer. She may want you to repair the clipper that she's going to keep as a backup, but she wants a good clipper that's going to run. So even though she's going to use it for a backup. So you will replace some fields and some armatures. Now, in this particular case, we already know we got a bad barrel. We got this large crack in here. So we would reach for our supplies and we would pull out another barrel. Now, there's some parts in here that you can reuse. You can buy new parts all the way around if you want. But these are called reseals. And they simply pull straight out on either side. Oftentimes they'll be distorted or swelled up with oil, and it's just simpler to replace them than it is to try to get these old ones back in. I don't like to fool with these too much because once you get them bent up a little bit, they're really hard to get back in. Now there's one more area that we're going to look at in here, and in front here there's a little slot, and there's what's called a thrust plate that's in there, and I just pushed it up and I pulled it out. Now we're going to look at this little thrust plate and we'll see, in fact, it has a hole drilled in it. The reason for that, there's a ball bearing at the end of this this field, and it was spinning thousands of times. And sometimes what we do, we can take this thrust plate, reverse it, and the other side looks fine. Now this has a hole or an indentation on both sides. So we would simply replace this, put a new one in. Some parts that we can also save, it has an oiler here. And we can save that oil. Behind this oil is a wick that goes down to the shaft. Now what we would do is take a large screwdriver, larger than this one, put it in this vent hole, take a hammer and crack it. And we develop a crack right here so we can take this oiler out and replace it. If you'd rather not do that, you can just simply stock new oilers, and when you put one back in, you just put it in. In other words, when you get the housing, this oiler is not going to be in it. Now, our next thing that we have to do is take out the bearing. Now, there's two large screws that's down inside there, and they're a little bit hard to see, but they're down in there. Now, this has two large screws down in it that holds this bearing in place. And here's where you may need some magnification. You may want some light down in there. Now, there's our bearing retainer. There's one screw that came out. Here's my other screw on the end of the screwdriver. And inside here, we have the bearing, and then we have a felt washer that goes around it. It's meant to soak up oil from the wick and feed this bearing oil. Now, normally when we take one out, we're going to replace this bearing. This bearing is relatively cheap. The clipper is held in this position, so all the pressure when this clipper was used, it was on this bearing. Okay, this bearing is a very cheap part. I think they're like 75 cents. So every time we take a bearing out, unless we've just recently done it, we're going to replace this bearing. I happen to keep my new bearings in a little film canister, and they're soaking in oil. And as I use them up, I just put new ones in there. So they're soaking in oil. The bearing will soak up a lot of oil. In this case, this wick is really black, so we probably would replace this this little felt. If we would elect to use it, we would clean these parts up. We'd put some Oster clipper oil on them. Oil our bearing. Now, the way this goes in the barrel, this has a little lip on one end of it, and it goes into the barrel this way. This way would be wrong, but just remember that little tube, this little lip goes in first. And the way I usually do that, I simply load up the parts. Now, this is the bearing retainer. It holds the bearing in place. This is where the screws went in. It has a little lip on it, so this is the way it goes. You don't want it flipped over this way. So we're going to load this on our screwdriver. We're going to put our wick on, and we're going to put our bearing on. And we're going to go into the clipper and let the parts dump right straight in there. Now, what I'm going to do, it's loaded, ready to go. This is kind of an important tool. This is called a screw starter. And you got to reach down in that barrel, and it's very hard to get that in there without anything other than a screw starter. I have taken a regular screwdriver and put chewing gum on the end of it to hold my screw till I get it started in those holes. Now the screw is loaded on the end of my barrel. I can go down in there now, find my hole, get it started. snapped into place. It's going to hold it for me. Start the second screw. You can only go so tight with the screw starter, and you're going to have to finish them. Now, on these older clippers, they actually have threaded holes, and they use machine screws inside here. On some of the newer ones, they have, I call them sheet metal screws. They got a point on them. They're kind of like self-starting. I don't like them as well as the old style, but that's what we have to work with today. Okay, we have our bearing back in our barrel. If this was a new housing, we would snap in this, either the used oiler, or we would put in a new one. We're going to put our thrust plate back in, probably a new one, and we're just going to grab it, and we're going to start it in that slot, and then push it down. The next thing we're going to do is put in our grease seals, our oil seals. And there again, I usually grab them with the needle nose. Move them over into place. Normally speaking, I can do a clipper like this probably in about 15 minutes and spot the old parts as I see them. So it can be, you should be able to make some money on this. Now we're going to start reassembling our parts. Probably we tested this was good. We're going to take a paper towel and we're going to go inside there. And we're going to clean out some of that gook in there. We're going to take our armature and we're going to take some Oster grease. Now, in the old days, these ball bearings that are in the end of the clipper, they're a bearing, they would fall out. And the only thing that held them in place was a little bit of grease. So I guess I'm not quite sure if I have to oil this anymore today, but we used to hold these little ball bearings in with a spot of grease. So I'm going to have it, it's going to go in there. I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on there. I'm not going to overload it. That's plenty. And then there's no oiler for this back bearing, but there's a bearing in the back of here, this armature, that is identical to the one that's in front. But the clipper, we normally don't replace that. You can reach down in there and replace it if you like. But I'm going to put just a tad of clipper oil on there. Just a drop, and now I can carry it to the inside. And I make sure it turns freely. I'm going to grab it. We got our thrust plate in already and our grease seals. And we're just simply going to go backwards with the process and push it into place. Now we're going to snap in our large ring, and it has two sides. It has a little groove in it. The groove goes down, just simply falls into place. We're going to hold our snap ring. We're going to get a hold of it with our snap ring pliers, and we're going to ease it down into place. It has a groove that it actually fits into. We're going to take a look inside there and make sure that it's down in the area where it belongs. And we're good to go. So the next thing we're going to do, if we decided that we're going to replace gear, link, and lever, in this case we're going to put these old parts back in, we're going to re-lubricate these a little bit with Oster grease. Now, I do recommend that you buy Oster Andis grease. This grease will not conduct electricity, so there is a safety factor. If you use some off-the-shelf grease, it may work, but I can't guarantee you that it's not going to conduct electricity, and Oster wants to keep their customers safe. So you should use this oil or this particular grease. You may choose to use something else, but I recommend that you use Oster grease. We're going to grease that worm gear in there just a little bit over the top. I've seen plenty of these clippers that came in that were over greased. They really don't need a ton of it, but I'm going to put grease in every place where there's a contact point. I'm going to put some on this post. Now, while we're this far, I have seen recently that this post right here that the lever sits on was broken. In other words, I could take it and flex it. It would actually move back and forth. The clipper, the whole housing has to be replaced if you discover one of those. Also, this post that holds the gear on, also on occasion becomes, I've seen maybe 7 or 8 of them over the years, that this post broke the housing. In a case like that, it has to be replaced also. We're going to reassemble this, match up our 2 posts, and simply come down, making sure it's below the top of the housing. At this point, we can put our end cap on. This has got the information of the clipper. By the way, if you call a supplier and you want parts, you should read this end cap and it will give you what the model number is. So when you talk to your supplier, you can say you need parts for a single speed, a golden A5, a 2-speed A5. So you'll get your information on it. I will caution you though, on occasion, these parts might have been switched. In other words, someone put a different end cap on it, like this one's worn. Someone put their finger. Someone may have a supply of these end caps. I do. So I would put a new end cap on. So I got to make sure that I put the end cap on that matches the clipper. Another thing that I do, I probably am going to take an etching tool and I'm going to etch a code on here. If this was an American Animal Hospital, I probably would have a code there with an American Animal Hospital. On a loose leaf notebook, I would record that on this date, these are the parts that I put in this clipper. If in fact this clipper came back to you and said, you know what, you just put a drive in there, or you just put a gear in there and it's doing the same thing. Well, I can look at my list and see that, no, I didn't put a drive in there. So, you know, you really can't blame me for a bad part because I didn't put it in. It could have been she forgot. It could have been another repair guide came along. But I like to know, if you're doing a volume of these things, I like to know what parts I put in them. So I can always go back and look at my my records and see what's going on. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to put our end cap on, but I want to show you something here first on the end cap that holds the switch in place. Oftentimes you're going to replace this switch, and we'll just do that real quick. This has a retaining nut. This retaining nut comes off, and oftentimes this is missing. I don't know if vibrations causes it to fall off or the customer took it off, but this actually is holding the switch in place. So you need a supply of these. The newer ones are made out of plastic, but you need a supply of these that you can replace these if in fact it's missing. To get the switch out, you merely push it out. Remember, you have nothing plugged in. And you finesse the switch out. Now, if in fact I was replacing this, if this was cracked, I have to take this switch off in order to get this off. And just remember, before you reassemble the switch, that you put this back on, otherwise you're going to be taking this off again. It's just simply held in place with 2 screws. Now, while we have it open, these are these 2 terminals that we checked earlier on. We put one terminal here, and we put one terminal here, and then we would work the switch, and we could see if we had current going through the switch. But what you're going to do, you're going to remove these 2 screws. This is going to come off. You're going to put this switch over here go back to the customer. You're just going to put on an identical switch. Get it on there. Put your 2 screws back in. What I usually do, before I move that over there, I get this flipped over into position. And I start working the cord. And I like to get it started in the back here. You can see it's still sticking up here. And then I work it down. Our switch is still in place. Now I have to pull fairly hard. There, it just popped into place. It's now where it belongs. And it makes sure my wires are out of the way here. We're going to put our retaining nut back on. Now, for me, this is a bit of an aggravation because this likes to cross thread, and you have this cord to deal with here. So this is a little bit of patience to restart this without a cross thread. Oftentimes you do it the first time, but you can fumble with that darn little guy. We get it on there finger tight, and then we're simply gonna lock it down so nothing can move. Now this is going to go into the end of the clipper. This has a small notch in the side of the housing, and that matches with a notch that's in the side of the end cap. So I'm going to position this. Here's my notch. I'm going to match the notch in there. There, it's snapped into place. I'm going to hold it. Start my 2 screws with the washers on them. Go down in there with the Phillips. Don't over tighten them. Now in this particular case, we just put this clipper back together. We didn't put on new parts. But all the new parts, I would be making a list and recording them. We need to put our brushes back in. What we're going to do is clean these brushes just slightly. On occasion, a brush will develop a slight burr on the side of it, and it won't go into the tube right. In other words, it won't make contact on that armature in there. So in a case like that, if you feel it with your finger, if you feel any roughness on there, you may want to take your emery cloth and just do the 4 sides of the brush to make sure that it can slide freely into that port. Now this has a concave to it that's going to match the armature that's in the machine. So we're going to take this, and actually that armature matches the barrel, that curve. So if you hold it in that position, you know you're going to put it in there right. If you don't get it in there right, it probably will work anyway. It will seat itself eventually, but it's not correctly, and it may not run right at first. We're going to put our brush retainer on. It's a little brass with a little plastic cap on it. That's insulation. That's a safety feature, and that little plastic should be on. You're going to push it down in there into place, and I like to hold it and then sneak up on it with the actual brush cap. This is another guy that likes to cross thread, so you may back it out a few times to get it. And we're going to turn it over and repeat the process with the second brush, watching your curvature. Put a retainer on. We'll snap into place. Sneak up on it with your cap. Now this is one of those guys that wants to cross thread, so I'm backing off. And there we go. We need our hinge on yet. Remember, we had it pre-assembled in the first place, so it was ready to go into place. Replace if necessary. Get your second screw in. Okay, at this point, we'd plug our clipper in, we'd snap some blades on it, we'd plug it into our meter and run it, see what it's pulling, and you know, check our list that we didn't forget any parts. We'd like to take a cloth and clean up the clipper, get our fingerprints off of it. We like to coil the cord in more or less of a professional manner. And that's pretty simple to do by just starting a loop. And we get about that far, we're going to grab it and wrap the cord around the barrel. This is usually the recommended way of doing this. Oster tells you that they don't want the cord wrapped around the clipper itself. Put it in place. You know, maybe make a final check of it. Check our list that we remembered all the parts that we replaced. And there you have it. You know, we took this clipper completely apart. Normally I do it in 15-20 minutes, replace the parts, charge for my labor, charge for the parts I put in, and you know, make some decisions whether it's worth fixing or not. So basically, that's there's different models out. There's a Cool Running that's got a taller cap on it. There's 2 speeds. The only thing I recommend, if you take the switch out of a 2-speed, you may want to make a little diagram. There's 3 terminals in there that you got to put in the same place, and I always like to make a little diagram, even today yet, that I know where the terminals go back. Now we're going to take a look at the Andis clipper. The Andis is, in our neck of the woods, is more popular today than the Oster. This is a little bit of an older style. It has a square case, and it happened to be an Andis Super 2-speed. This round barrel seems to be more popular with the ladies today, so we're going to take a look at both of these. They're basically similar, but there are differences too. Now the first thing we're going to do, there again, we have this clipper in our hand. We're going to check the hinge. We always like to do that first. And we try to pull it up with our fingernail, and it's tight. Now you will notice in this particular clipper, there's a bit of a difference. There's no latch to put up. It has a spring-loaded clip here, and when she snaps on the blade, it just snaps up into place, and then she pulls the blade off. On the Oster, you had to hit that little latch. You should hit it to remove the blade, and also I'd like to hit it to put the blade on. So this hinge is in good shape, but we're going to remove it. All right, now this I want to point out a little bit of a difference. There's different models that are going to have different hinges on it. Now, if you were working on a clipper such as this, you would see a little indentation right here, a little hole. And a spring that looks like this, a very small spring, powerful spring, actually fits in that little cavity. Now, don't be confused. It does not go in this blue clipper. I'm just putting it in there for illustration. Oftentimes when you take this hinge off, this is going to be packed with hair, and you may, the first time, not even realize that that little spring is in there. So if you have a maroon or black clipper like this, square shaped, it is going to have this little tiny spring in there, and for the hinge to work properly, this little spring has to be in there. Remember, it's not in this particular model here. Now, on this model here, they made it that you can snap off this end cap, and you can see that the drive is exposed. Every single Andis that comes into a shop, unless for whatever reason I know this drive has been replaced, I replace every single one. The instructions tell you to replace it about every 3 months or so. The booklet that comes with the clipper. I usually use a kind of a knife just to pry this drive up, and you can see that this is covered with hair and dirt, so I'm going to take my air gun and blow this off. Now, this looks fatigued. Can you see how it's drifted off to one side? It looks crooked. Now here's what a new one looks like. And it's stout. It sticks straight up. This is pretty well worn, and it probably is not given a spring action that it should. So this is the weak part of this clipper. It's considered a wear part, and it's expected to be replaced many times in the life of the clipper. We're going to set that aside, put it on our list that we're going to replace that. Now, on this clipper, we're going to start and it's a two-paste housing, so it's going to snap apart. Now, on this particular clipper, almost all the time when I'm working on this bail is going to come out and it's going to fall on the floor. And you may even forget to put it back in. So I usually take the bail out on purpose and set it aside where I can get it. Now, they do make a clipper that's got a wide bail and one that's more narrow, like this one. And it does require a different housing. This actually has a little plastic guard in there, which should be in there. It's meant to keep the hair from getting into the switch. On this particular Andis, it has screw terminals. In other words, you need to take a small screwdriver and loosen these screws up, and then the wire comes out. You can see they just end with just soldered wire. Now I'll quickly show you another style switch. This would be a switch that would be in a clipper such as this. However, this is only a single speed. But instead of having screw-in terminals, they actually have little plugs on the end of the clipper. And they just merely plug into the circuit board, such as this. So you have to know what model you're working on and what you're going to see. There are different switches. And of course, to take them out, you just pull the little plugs out. So we're going to set this aside. Now we have our cord off. The next thing we want to do is take off our brush terminals. Surprisingly, on an Andis, I've never had to replace a single set of brushes unless the customer for some reason took them out and did something to them, didn't install them correctly, or on this particular model there's actually little screws that hold the brushes in place that body would turn. But normally speaking, it seems like the Andis is very kind on brushes. I keep brushes on hand. Oftentimes when you take the side brush out of the other model, that little spring looks like the spring that's in a ballpoint, and it will go flying out if you don't catch it or hold it, and you'll spend a lot of time looking for it if you ever do find it. Now, the only thing that holds this motor in place is two screws here. It actually holds the circuit board in place. Okay, now we got this out. Now we notice that this post that this large screw went into was snapped off. It actually is part of the housing, and the clipper is actually kind of useless right now. You could put just a one in, but this post should be in here. So fortunately, we can replace this bottom housing for not very much money, but with the broken post, that would be the recommended way to go. On this particular model, it has two little clips on either side that hold the brushes in place. Now I'm going to snap it off, and there's a spring in there that's going to come out, and there it is, very small, and behind there is the brush. So the brush comes out, and it looks like that attached to a little wire. Remember to watch for that tiny spring. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. There comes our spring. If you lose it, you'll probably never find it, and you're going to have to replace it. You need to pull that brush out, and there it is. And these brushes are the size. That's what they're supposed to look like. I do see some carbon on the side of this brush, so we are going to clean that up slightly. Now, to get to the armature in this particular clipper, this happens to be nothing more than a walnut pick, a pick that you take walnuts apart with, but it works really well. There's a little clip in here, and if you break it off, you're going to have to replace this part here. This is called a motor drive. So I pop my clip back. Now, there is rubber that's wrapped entirely around there. And what I did, I took a knife and I slit on either side so that I could remove this clip. And I do keep these clips on stock because sometimes this little hook down here breaks off. And I go to the other side, and it's the same thing. You need to finesse out that little clip. Be careful not to break off the plastic. There again, if you break it off, you probably should replace it out of your pocket. Now this is a permanent magnet, so this pulls off kind of hard. And the thing to watch for in here, there's a little rubber boot that sometimes will be attached to the clipper yet. But I like to get it off where I know where it's at and put it back in the front motor mount. Also, you're going to notice some brass screw inserts. This is what holds the drive in. This is where your screws go in. If these strip out, or if they're spinning, there's no repair, there's no super glue or anything you can use. You have to replace it with a new one. Now, the motor is going to pull straight out. Remember, this is a magnet. So you're pulling against that magnet, and it simply comes out. This is the armature. This is the field. I'm sorry. This is the field. It's a permanent magnet versus the Oster, which was wound. Here again, we see where there's some heavy carbon marks on the brush. We're going to clean that up. It has two bearings on either end. We want to make sure they spin freely. These do screw out. You can take them out and replace just the bearings. This whole part comes out right here. Oftentimes what I do, I put on some magnification, and I'm going to look at this bearing, and oftentimes there's dog hairs that's thread around there. I can see some sticking out at this end right here, and I'm going to take a needle nose, and I'm going to try to remove as much of that hair as possible. And it's very fine, and it's hard to see, and that's why I really want the magnification. You want to get all this cleaned out. And then we're going to get ready to reassemble it, so I'm going to put just a tiny little drop of oil there. Just don't over oil it. Just a little bit on each side. If when you turn this, if it felt scratchy or clunky, then it should be replaced. On the field itself, it's pretty well foolproof, but it has rare metal in there. And I have seen where this would chip out. Matter of fact, when you took this out, a big chunk of this metal would come out. And of course, you're going to have to replace this then. They're readily available. On the circuit itself, the switch is, you know, you're going to replace quite a few switches. That's going to be one of the areas that fall. Before you replace it, you may try to blow it out with an air gun and make sure that it's free. On a clipper such as this, it has a switch that runs up here and runs back to a switch down here. On the body of the switch, this little black switch that you take out, you'll find hair built up on the switch, which prevents it from sliding all the way up. It will look identical to the switch itself, so you may want to take something like a screwdriver or a pair of pliers, and you'll be surprised how much hair you can get out, which prevented the switch from moving full force. So you want to check that first before you replace the switch. This again, this is the back motor mount where the brushes go, and it again has a little rubber boot inside there, which matches up with the back end of the armature. So you want to make sure the boot sometimes comes out and is stuck actually on the armature. So we're going to start reassembling this. Now, one thing I want to caution you about, if you have a bad switch, if you turn it over and see a scorch mark, or you see a scorch mark right here, or you may see this little resistor actually broken off, don't even try to fix it. You'll never will. But if this is scorched out, you probably had a bad armature and it caused the switch to blow. So if you see that black mark, you can almost bet you better check your armature, and you're going to do it the same way as we did the Oster. We're going to check 2 terminals, and then check this one and this one, and then this one and this one, this one and this one. And what you're looking for is all these segments ought to be within 10% of each other. If you have a wild up and down, your meter's going all over the place, then just replace this. If you don't replace this and it's bad, as soon as you turn the clipper on again, you're going to blow another switch, which will probably be your dime and not the customer's. So we're going to start going backwards. We're going to take the back motor mount, insert the armature. We're going to take the field. It's got a little notch cut in on either side. And it matches a notch in the back motor mount. Now we're going to insert the front motor mount. There again, it's got a little notch that it's going to snap into place. We're going to take our springs. The clip end goes in the back. It merely pops into place. You turn it over, snap in the second one, and it pops into place. Okay, we have this reassembled, ready to go back in the clipper, but the first thing we have to do is put our brushes in. Now the brushes only go in one way, and you can't force them if they don't go easy. You may want to clean them up a little bit. They should slide very, very easy. I have seen on this older style Andis where the brushes would actually hang up, and you think they're making contact with the armature, but in fact they're just barely touching it, or they're not touching it, and obviously it's not going to go. Now this part is a tiny bit tricky. You got this loose spring, and usually what I do, I set it on top and try not to sneeze at this point. The clip actually has a little dimple on it. I think that shows up with a dimple. I'm going to put that on top of the spring, come down and get my clip on the back side, and then just snap it into place. There again, keep some of these on hand, because if you lose one, you can spend a lot of time looking for them and you may never find them. So these little springs are tap it into place, make sure it's sliding good. Set our spring on top. There again, align it how we're going to go. The clip's going to go on the bottom. Line up our dimple on top of the spring. Get it started and snap it into place. Now we're going to take our back housing. Simply drop this into place. Our switch is going to go in. Make sure it clears the back. On this particular screw, I don't like to use a power screwdriver because of fear of breaking it off if it over tightens. At this point, so we don't forget, we're going to put our brush terminals on the two terminals that are on the switch. And they just simply slide on these little posts. They have to be turned in the right way so your top housing will clear the brush. Now we're going to reinstall our cord. The white one goes on the inside. It really doesn't seem to make much difference which way you put them in. But you are going to have a small screwdriver to get that terminal. I do probably far more repair on the Oster clipper, which I have to say Oster company has made me a lot of money over the years. This Andis is going to get new switches. It's going to get constant drives put in it. But outside of that, it seems to be a better running clipper. Before we forget, we're going to put our plastic guard back over the switch to keep the hair out. I'm now going to insert the bail. I don't know if customers use them very often or not, but if I didn't put it back in, they'd wonder where their bail is. Put our wire down into place. It only goes one direction. Make sure it clears the switch. The switch turns freely. On the clipper itself, you're going to have to make sure that you have the switch in the back position if that's how you took it off. This little black has to match up with the top of the clipper. So we're going to get it into place. And you kind of check it around to make sure it's sealing up all the way around. There is a difference in the screws. The longer screws are always going to go in the front, and the short screws are going to be in the back of the clipper. It's a long drive, so I usually like to use power. I don't finish tightening them though. I'm going to finish that by hand. Now we're going to take our new drive, and you can always recognize a new drive. It's going to have usually some maroon colored grease that's just dabbed inside. You normally put the drive, this turn, you usually put it in the down position, as far down as it will go. There's two little tiny pegs, one here and one over here, that match two holes there and there. So you're going to get it on there, and then you're going to pop it into place. You're going to check it on this side to see if it's flush. Check it on this side to see if it's flush. Your small screws go in. Remember, if the screw loosen up, if those brass fittings become damaged, you're going to have to replace that front motor mount. And that's fairly common that they come in that way. We will supply you with some diagrams of these motors. So if you know the model, the Ultra, you can look at your chart and you can tell what cord it gets, what switch it gets, all the parts, and then that will tell you what to order. Also, when you talk to our supplier, if you tell them you have an Ultra, or you have a Super 2-speed, or 2-speed, or single speed, you merely mention that, and they'll pull out the armature or the cord that is proper for that particular model. Now, at this point, we're just going to snap our cover back into place. We're going to turn the clip over. Remember, if this was the orange style, you would have to have that small spring put inside, but this one does not need it. Simply goes over the drive. Actually, when I replace this drive, supposedly you don't have to take this off, but I've always found it easier, even with this style where you just snap off the cover. I've always found it much easier to take off this hinge to put the drive into place. It just goes so much easier. But if you like doing it without taking the hinge off, that is fine. Okay, at this point we're going to plug our clipper in, and we might as well stick it in our meter and see what it's going to pull. We're plugged into our meter. We're going to turn it on low speed. Verifies that it runs. We're on low speed. We should be at 60 milliamps. We're running right at 60. Should double. There it is. We got our proper readings. The clipper is working fine. You snap a blade off and on. We're about finished. On this particular clipper, the only thing we did to it, we put a new drive in it. We would list that, and we would charge $15 labor charge to go inside and check out other things. If we would have found other problems, of course, we would have repaired them. And there again, we like to bundle them up. We're just going to grab this cord. This would be ready to go back in the box with the housing, the charges, and we'd go on to our next project. What I would recommend if you decide to get into clipper repair, I would buy an Andis or an Oster clipper, or perhaps one of each. Sometimes we have used clippers available, not all the time, but I would just take one apart. And I'd look at it, I'd take everything apart that I could, and I simply put it back together. You know, when you took it apart, you had good parts, so it should run. And with just a little bit of experience, I know when I first started out, I used to fumble with them, and they seemed to take me longer than I really cared. I put clippers entirely back together and to discover there was another problem and had to take them apart. But over the years, I've become to the point that I can usually do this work in just a matter of minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and replace parts and get it going again. There's certainly a lot of clippers I don't fix. We don't like to work on lobs. We farm that out. We really don't see very many wall clippers. You may see some big clip masters come in, and basically they're the same as these, only thing, everything is a little bit larger. It has a set of brushes in there, it has an armature that you can check, and it certainly has a switch that can go bad. In this next part of the tape, we're going to look at a large clip master. We're in cattle company, so we see a few of these clippers come in. Now this is a head that came off of this clipper here, and we're going to look at that first. It has an adjustment up here that as the blade is used, they can add tension to the blade. It pushes down on this mechanism here. But let's just show you some common problems that you're going to encounter with this large clipper. I really don't know how it happens, but it has a set of leaf springs in here that become broken and worn, and quite often needs replacing. I took out the side screws. Now this mechanism, this yoke, pulls right out, and you can see it has a couple of large washers on either side. Now, if you look at these are the leaf springs that I was talking about. There's 3 leaves on each side. And for whatever reason, sometimes one or more of these leaves will break. It will just crack right there. So this no longer gives the spring to the blade back and forth. So there's 2 ways. You can buy this yoke assembly, spring assembly, and you can simply take out the older one with the broken leaves and probably give it back to the customer. Or what I quite often do, you can buy these individual springs, and all 6 of them are identical. So you grind out this rivet that's in the end here, and then you could remove this set of springs. You replace the spring that's bad, and then put the rivet back in, put this on an anvil, and with a ball peen hammer, you can round out this rivet again. And these are very, very inexpensive to buy the individual springs, but you can buy a dozen springs and you can replace a lot of yokes. One thing I want to caution you, there's a brass block that is on the end of this shaft, and it matches up with the yoke assembly. It just slides in and out. Oftentimes when working on this brass block will fall off and become lost. So I want you to know it's there, and will fall on the floor. So, maybe take it off and set it aside. Then when you're ready to reassemble, put it back on. I probably would put this unit, there's some screws in here that you take out, and there's a gear assembly in there. Then at that point, this thing can go into a degreaser bath, and you can clean all this cook out. On the top of the clipper itself, there's 2 places that says oil, oil, oil. And I would pass on to my customer that they'd be aware that the dang thing needs oil. And it's, when they walk out to shear their sheep or their animals with their clipper, they should take their can of oil with them. To reassemble this, we need to put our washers back in. They have a flange on one end. And this certainly should be cleaned up before it goes back together. It's inserted in the sides. Align your screw holes for your large studs. Get your other side aligned. Now sometimes these clippers are running, they become hot. And you should take a look inside here to see how the grease is in there. They should be operated submerged in grease. Okay, we're going to remove these 2 screws and we're going to get into this gear case. And it simply pulls out, and right away we see we got some dried, caked grease. It probably isn't doing its job anymore. There's also hair in it. So we're going to clean all this out. We're going to scrape it out, probably soak it in something. This gear comes out. And we're going to clean out the inside of this case, this old grease. And then we can use Oster grease again. But for a job like this that's going to take a lot of grease, we buy grease in a quart can. It's Oster grease. Comes some Oster. And we dig it out with we like to use a popsicle stick or something of that nature. And you're going to pack these little gears and get rid of all this old dried out, corroded grease, and then it simply is going to go back into place. You got 2 small screws that hold and hold that in place. So replace the grease or repack it if necessary. Okay, on this particular one, our brass block fell off. So we're going to clean this out. This feels very sticky and very gummy. And we're going to clean all this out, re-oil it from this side. And then we're going to reinsert our yoke. And this sometimes is also a little bit of finesse to get it aligned back up on the yoke. I have found no easy way to do it. It's just a matter of popping it in there. So all cleaned out, oil it from this side, oil it from this side, and your head is ready to go. Now the body of the blade itself, we're going to remove these two large screws which holds the head to the clipper. Yes, we need to get the screw all the way out. Set that aside. Now, the first thing you're going to see, this is the wrong cord on here. Someone put this cord on. It's not fitting right. We need to put a correct cord on there. It has a little air vent here. There again, this clipper has a fan in it. It's going to suck air through it. So we're going to take out this little filter, this little air filter. Clean it up if necessary. And then we're going to remove these large screws. These screws are identical, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. But do watch where they fall if you don't get them completely out, because there we got 5 screws and you need them to put back. This case just pops off. And there it is. It looks almost identical to the small clipper, except everything is larger. Now, this is held together. On this particular clipper, it's just held together with some wing nuts. So we can just remove those. We got white to white, and then the black goes to the switch. And here we have the new cord that's going to mount in here, and it's going to be, remember we said white to white, but before we do that, we're going to show you some other areas here. Now, there's 2 large brushes on either side, and usually when you take it apart, they'll stay in place, but they actually just lift up. And you can see the large brush. It can only go in the brush tube a certain way. It's got to be inserted in there and then put in place, and sometimes you kind of have to hold it while you get the cover back on. With the brushes out, there's 2 screws here that hold the bearing in place. and the whole motor just comes up. You can pull the armature out. What I'm going to be looking at is this bearing back here. I want it to spin freely. I want this front bearing to spin freely. If this doesn't spin, you can buy this armature with the bearings on it, or you can buy the bearings if you have a way to press them on and have a way of removing these bearings. There again, probably clean up this black rub marks on here. You can also put your meter on there and go from segment to segment if this clipper wasn't running right, and you could determine if this was a good armature or not. There's not much to the field. It usually lasts. You probably are going to have to clean it out. It's usually pretty dirty in there. I normally would take an air gun and just blow it out, then probably take a rag and clean it out. To reassemble, you simply put it back in, set it in the clipper. You see there's channels here that your wires are going to run. You got to make sure you don't pinch your wires, that you actually get them down in those channels. Make sure it snaps down. It has an O-ring up here which goes in a groove. Make sure it's in place and everything spins. You're not hung up anywhere. Okay, we're going to put our bearing retainer on here. Watch where your wires are at. Get our screw started. Now we're going to insert our bearings or our brushes. Look how the curve matches the armature. Tilt it back, insert the brush. There again, it will only go and that's the way it goes. It just snaps into place. Now the tricky part gets sometimes when you try to put the second one back in, you move your position, you move your armature, and the other one wants to pop out. Okay, hold the brushes in place. Make sure everything turns freely. And it looks like we're good to go. Now, we're going to reinsert our wires, our new cord. Remember, the white goes to white. There again, I oftentimes write this down when I take a wire off, so that when I'm ready to reassemble, there's no guessing that. And the black is going to go to the black. Okay, we're going to insert our cord down in that groove. We've got to get our switch in the grooves. These cords got to go down inside here. You can't cover up these post holes where the screws got to go. And if it looks like we're good to go, we take our top housing, and snap it into place. Let's see if we can get in there with the electric. We're going to put our dust cover back into place. See how everything looks? Our switch is free. We're going to plug in. And we got a new cord. We're going to charge $25 for this repair, plus whatever the cost of the parts. Of course, we would have troubleshooted in there and to see if anything else was wrong. We still have to put our head on it. We're going to clean this head up a little cleaner so it looks nice going back to the customer. We feel that's part of the charge. So you don't have to repair every clipper out there. You can certainly turn some down, but you may want to fix the ones that you see common in your area and you want to stock parts for. But don't be afraid to farm out the difficult jobs. I hope this tape was informative to you, and I hope that you can make this a nice sideline part of your business. Nebraska Blade thanks you. As always, I take no credit for what we, or Nebraska Blades, have achieved. I give all the credit to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gives grace and mercy to myself and all mankind. Thank you.